You're still watching Sunrise at Sea, and you're just in time for your wellness and lifestyle segment. And this morning we're going to be having a discussion in regard to how best we can treat anxiety using food. Now, world over, very many people struggle with anxiety. It could be anxiety of a new job. It could be anxiety of just being afraid to even be adventurous and take on new opportunities. So that is what we're going to be discussing. Instead of resorting to Western medicine, how best can we actually use our homemade natural food to make sure that we get rid of this epidemic? Well, before we start off, I will define what anxiety is, then I will introduce my guest this morning. Well, anxiety is your body's natural response to stress. It is a feeling of fear and apprehension about what's to come. It could be the first day of school, going to a job interview, or giving a speech may cause most people to feel fearful and even nervous. But if your feelings of anxiety are extreme and last longer than 6 months and are interfering with your life, you may actually be suffering with an anxiety disorder. Well, joining me at the center of this conversation is none other than Dr. Grace Nambatya Cheyune, and she is a Ugandan medicinal chemist and researcher and academic who serves as a director of the research at the National Chemotherapeutic Research Institute. Thank you so much, Dr. Grace, for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Well, you're welcome to Sunrise at Sea.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
And this morning, we're going to be looking at how best to treat anxiety using food.
Yes.
Now, earlier on, I had defined what anxiety is, but even before we get into how best we can actually treat it using food, first and foremost, what are the signs that you are actually having an anxiety attack?
Yeah, actually, you may become withdrawn, opting to be alone. You feel low, sleeping a lot sometimes.
Sleeping a lot?
Yeah, you might get into oversleeping. Yeah, some people end up overeating. Yeah, so somebody doesn't feel happy, but you've defined it. Sometimes it could be a short-term issue, which may not be very serious. Like, for example, if you lost a relative or a friend, there is that short depression. Anxiety can also be synonymous with depression, and probably it doesn't really get into you that much. But I think we're now talking of that anxiety that goes maybe beyond 6 months, and where really one needs to seek care, because it's described as a mental disorder. Yes, and we want to look at, apart from the usual seeking of care, where you're given medicine or sometimes counseling, food comes in very handy. And this is something we overlook. So I believe we want to look at how we can use foods around us to really lay off that anxiety.
Dr. Grace, we have had, I am a mental health advocate, and I have had these conversations with so many people. And I have found out that not so many people are actually aware that sometimes they are having anxiety attacks. Or even when you tell someone that I am experiencing anxiety, for very many Ugandans, they will come out and say, what do you mean you are having an anxiety attack? It is unheard of.
It's really not obvious to think that it's a bit out of the normal.
Out of the normal Ugandan culture.
Yeah, because it's like we tend to think that, well, that's part of life. You ups and downs. But really, first of all, it identifies with not feeling well. And you don't feel happy. And productivity goes down. You can even end up losing your job. You can end up messing up your relationship, not only say in marriage relationships, but family. Your children may dissent you because you always, the mods are very low, but it's gratifying to know that it can just be worked on quickly through foods we eat. And then you feel good, and of course when you feel good, you will perform, you get a promotion, or you achieve your goals.
Okay.
So, but unfortunate thing that we live with it. We live with it, but we need to really get to know what it is, and that we are at liberty to turn it around.
Okay, so now let's hit the nail right on the head. Now that we have understood what anxiety is, we have looked at the causes, we've looked at the symptoms. My next question would be, so away from the Western medicine, what foods can we actually eat in order to reduce this anxiety?
Okay, first of all, before we talk of the foods, we need to know the chemistry behind. In a simple layman's language, we know that the brain, which is at the front of coordinating us, for us to be able to say the right things, make the right steps, has at its base cells that are called neurons. A primary cell in a brain is a neuron. And between those different cells, which we call neurons, there is need to be connectivity, for the brain to be able to perform in terms of linking up with other parts of the body, because the command center is there in the brain. And it's like even sitting here, blinking, talking, there is a whole lineup of activities taking place but commanded from the brain. So there are those chemicals which are called neurotransmitters. If we've heard of adrenaline, we've heard of serotonin, we've heard of dopamine. Dopamine and serotonin, they are the major two neurotransmitters that are responsible for our moods.
Yes.
So the connectivity between the cells, once it's disrupted, then our moods are affected. And the level at which they are disrupted signifies the level at which you become anxious or depressed. So if the disruption is low, this is simple, stint, like we talked of losing somebody, and then it's not permanent. So we have situations that lead to disconnecting, leading to the disconnection. And if we talk about habits like smoking, it can lead to lowering of those neurotransmitters. So there is a disconnect, and somebody is simply not part of the world. You are there seated with somebody, but they are very, very depressed, to the level of, some people could reach that level of becoming suicidal.
Yes.
Yes, so we have what we call toxicity. This is when we really have lots of toxicity in the system that's brought about by poor eating processed foods that lead to that disconnect we've talked about. So food that can help you ensure that there is no disconnect. Proteins, for example, chicken. Chicken is commonly around. You have this piece of chicken, a protein, an egg yolk. They have, the protein in there is broken down into the smallest unit called an amino acid. And particularly from chicken, that amino acid leads to what we call L-tyrosine. That is a particular amino acid that ensures that dopamine, which is supposed to make you feel good, is created. Okay. On another front, it's fish. It's broken down into a particular amino acid that is responsible for creating serotonin, which is a neurotransmitter that's responsible for your moods. If you see somebody very low in moods, the serotonin is very low. Okay. And some of the things that lead to very low serotonin are the processed carbohydrates. Okay. These donuts, chapati, white bread, the processed. These cakes we eat, like if you had 3 parties in a day and you're cutting these creamed cakes, a lot of sugar, very high sugar leads to depression. Instantly when you've just eaten it, you may feel, okay, you've eaten, it's nice, but shortly the mood is low.
Quite interesting, because for very many people out there, they feel that when they're actually depressed or even having an anxiety attack or panic, the best thing that they can think of is getting a cake, getting chocolate, taking a soda, something sweet, thinking that will actually make them feel better. In fact,
once you're craving those very sweet things, your serotonin is low. You crave, and then it goes even lower. So you will notice that after all those sweets I've eaten, I've taken this soda, I've taken, at the end of the day, you feel very, very low. Yeah, and you crave more. And then, of course, after that, you put on that weight you don't want. And, it starts simple like that. And if we go deeper into other causes, because there are other causes, for example, we have vitamins, like the B vitamins,
that
B12,
are lacking in the body?
B6. If they are lacking, still that adds on to, depression. Of course, it's like a number of causes. So there is need to evaluate and see where could be the challenge be.
Okay.
So if a nutritional, like for us, we deal in nutritional assessment, we will look into all those, because at the end of the day, maybe you may not be eating those processed carbohydrates. You may be eating the good ones. These are the ones like vegetables. Just eat it as gotten from the garden.
Okay.
Don't process. If it's sweet potatoes, eat them as they are. If it's maize flour, instead of eating that white processed flour, you eat the maize itself. Yeah. So
Okay.
you could be the one. You said, but for me, I don't eat processed foods. Then we look into the vitamin B. You could be lacking B12, B6. If you're okay there, we look into minerals. Selenium. It's a particular mineral. If it's very low in your system, you could get into depression. And there you could find simple leafy vegetables or powders like moringa. There's a lot of talk about moringa, but you need to know, what do I get from moringa? It's one herbal powder that has a lot of selenium. So we talk about rational use of such of these things. But if we're looking at depression, you particularly go for those. You can even add on a supplement, because first food must be there, and then supplement. But almost on, like, somebody should guide you that that's what you need.
Okay.
Yes.
So finally, as we wind up this conversation, Dr. Grace, what would you like to tell someone who is watching us this morning and they are probably stigmatizing someone who is going through or having an anxiety attack or panic?
Actually, it's high time we recognize that mad people are not the only ones who pick stones and throw. There are lots of, it starts with depression. You find this guy in a taxi, banging the door. We should look out and recognize these signs, especially somebody being used to, and suddenly, they're not happy, they're angry at a tiny thing, and we should recognize they need help. But the very easy thing is first look into food. And with the COVID pandemic, it has even doubled or tripled the depression levels, because there is, if you have very low vitamin D, which is called the sunshine vitamin, you're prone to depression. And COVID-19, what it did was to even deplete this further.
Okay.
So people watching us should know that there are solutions out there. Sunshine vitamin, just sit in the sun, things like cheese, egg yolk, if we could go for local eggs, because they are richer in that, would really go a long way to help us. And having a depressed person around you can really cost you. Because if it goes deeper, this is why I feel get somebody committed suicide.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Grace, of course, just 60 seconds. You had asked me behind the scenes to give you the opportunity to say a thing or two about how you feel about us inviting you to Sunrise at Sea and what you have seen.
Yeah, Sunrise, actually, I've visited many studios. But I think this is the best one I'm visiting so far. It's really great. It's like, it blends with nature. I think I love nature. Yeah, it's like you seated, ambience, and good ambience boosts immunity. Yeah, it lowers depression.
There you have it. So if you're not waking up to watch Sunrise at Sea and you're having anxiety or panic disorders, the best thing you need to do is wake up every morning, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. and enjoy the ambience that comes with Sunrise at Sea. Otherwise, thank you so much, Dr. Grace, for honoring our invitation, and I hope that you were able to pick a thing or two. If you're someone that constantly battles and suffers from anxiety, we understand that this thing actually happens. It's high time that you seek help. Otherwise, thank you so much. Up Actually, Dr. Nambetia is still going to be with us, and she's going to be sitting in our views, where we're going to be discussing suicidal attempts and tendencies, I beg your pardon. So right next is Sarah Apollo with part 2 of the Twitter Jab. Stay tuned and don't blink.